Hey everyone, welcome to Mastermind for the Masses. We are super excited today to have Kevin Lowe, CEO of Link, with us, and just excited to dive into whatever he brought for us today. But of course, before we do that, we want to check in with everyone, see what's going on this week. I'm going to kick things off and let you know I actually spent the this last weekend in St. Augustine. My wife and I had our
Nice.
4-year anniversary and got to do some cool new stuff. We did one day as like a spa day. So I did the whole sensory deprivation tank where you float in the salt water, and it was interesting. You know, the shortest time they offered was an hour. It was probably about 15, 20 minutes too long. Probably could have got out of there a little earlier. But, it was cool. I had never done it. And, did some other cool stuff. She got me a bourbon tasting, which was fun. And, just had a nice little weekend. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah,
Yeah, sounds fun.
that's what I had going on this week. Colby, how about you, sir? What you been up to, man?
I dropped a fat paycheck on some hockey equipment because I'm going to be skating and playing hockey tomorrow. There's like a little practice session that the rink near me does, and for people that don't know, I played hockey quite a bit up until like 5th grade before I moved down to Florida. So now that I'm back in South Carolina, there's more than 2 rinks in the entire state. I actually have one 15 minutes or so down the road. So they have like a league there, and they have like little practice sessions that you can pay to participate in and stuff like that. So I went out, bought myself a bunch of hockey gear, and I'll be doing that. So that was
Now,
kind of
Kobe,
my weekend.
are you strictly ice hockey?
That's what I've always played, but I've never actually played like inline or roller hockey before. But it looks fun.
It looks fun.
Yeah.
I love the true hockey enthusiast in you. That says
Yeah.
it looks fun.
Yeah.
If only you had lived in a state where there was the opportunity to do
It's
different
not
types
the
of
same.
hockey.
The rink smells
You can't say it's not the same. You didn't try it.
when you walk into a hockey rink, there's a certain smell, the cold air, the feel. I think part of it is just like nostalgia from like being a kid and playing it year round. But like the moment I walked into the rink and I was shopping around because the store was inside the rink, I was just like, man, like this just hits me like right in the feels. Like it's just something that I loved doing as a kid that I didn't get to because of how expensive it was in Florida. So yeah, I'm just super excited to get into it. Should be a lot of fun.
Love it.
It's awesome. So Shan, what you got going on this week, sir?
Not too much going on. I have my second local event that I'm going to be setting up shop for both brands again. It's one that we've set up at before, but one that I've never tackled both. So I've been trying to prep for that. I ended up selling my truck a couple weeks ago, which was my only way of transporting like a trailer or any of the event stuff. But luckily I found a replacement SUV this weekend, so I can actually make it there. A lot of stress off my back for that. But other than that, there's not too much going on this week. It's pretty slow week.
Other than, buying a new vehicle, not too much. Got it.
Yeah.
Stock standard.
Kevin. Yeah, exactly. Kevin, want to know what's going on with you this week, man? Other than doing Mastermind for the Masses, of course.
Yeah, for sure. The weekend was kind of slow, which was kind of nice. We did our leading up to this weekend was kind of crazy. So we do our Achievers Club for our sales team. So we were in Turks and Caicos for 3 nights, which is challenging when you have connecting flights that get delayed coming back home, or when yours truly has a flight from Turks and Caicos to Miami to Vegas for a channel partner show. So that didn't work out so well. I was dead tired, and I tried to act like I wasn't when I got to Vegas, but I think our salespeople enjoyed it, so it was worth it. Had a chance to regroup with them today when I finally got back. So it's been an interesting couple, 10 days or so. So a little tired, but all good.
I can only imagine. That's just taking the flight from Miami to Vegas takes it out of me. So if you tossed in Turk and Caicos too.
Well, and the problem is leaving, non-American countries, I think, feel very differently about flights being on time than we do here in the U.S., even though in the U.S. we care less about it. I feel like post-COVID, like everything has changed when it comes to travel. But it was an interesting experience for, I think, everybody involved, because we had salespeople getting home at 1:30 in the morning because their flights were delayed, and I was still headed out to Vegas. So Vegas for me is not the vacation I think that it is for some people. I don't love it as much as others. And, I was there for work and then bang out meetings, and then I'm happy to be home now with my wife for sure.
Gotcha.
My
Well, we
week sounds
appreciate you.
way less fun than Kevin's.
Oh man, well, we appreciate you. Find the strength to pull through and do one more obligation here. So
absolutely happy to do it.
Yeah, man. So I mean, like we do, I want to just turn it over to you and kind of let us know what you're thinking tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, if we're talking business challenges and, things that are on the forefront, I would say it's culture. For me, and I know that's an overused word. I know, people throw around the word culture and it's like, oh, we want the best culture. We want the best. But to me, culture is not about the way you talk about culture. It's how you implement. And culture is a living, breathing organism to me. And it's all of, it's how does your company breathe together? How do they operate together? That to me is culture. It's not just, hey, we have fun and we have lunches and we do all this cool stuff, or we have a cool campus like Power Design. But it's so much bigger than that. And the campus is part of it. But how do you become that living, breathing organism that is the culture that you want it to be? So for me, we've had some necessary, in my opinion. I mean, I started the company 19 years ago, which is so dumb to even say out loud. We've been through many iterations of change. So change doesn't scare me. I actually welcome it. But everybody in the organization doesn't always welcome it the way that I do, because they haven't seen the positive results of that change. If they've been here for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 5 years is a long time for a lot of people to be at a job. But that means I've been through 4 times the amount of iterations that someone that's been here for 5 years has been through. And I have the background to say that every time we go through a change that I feel is best for the company, we come out on the better side of it. But not everybody buys into that. So for me, it's culture, and it's also how do you get everybody to buy into, when you go through a change for the 4th or 5th time, that you as the CEO is very confident in that this is change that's necessary. But the people that are around you don't necessarily know that yet. That's a big challenge, right? Because you think you have the answers as a CEO, and you think you have the track record, but they haven't seen it yet.
Right.
So that would be one topic I think would just be kind of cool for the group to kind of discuss, is how do you get, even though it's the right decision, and you're not second guessing yourself, but how do you, and that confidence I think is showing through, which to me should be enough for anybody to buy in as as the people that work at your organization, but it isn't always the case.
Yeah.
And for me, it's for those ones that aren't buying in yet, or those ones that haven't, that don't have the faith in those decisions, how do we get those people to buy in? I think that's a good topic to discuss today.
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
No, it's a great topic. I can jump in first here. So when I think about buy-in, right, a couple of strategies I would, I guess, put out there, but I think you need varying strategies based on kind of the impact and size of scope of the change. Because, as CEO, Kevin, you have a fairly decent sized company there. Like, you're not going to be able to get everybody in the room and get their opinions on it and kind of get that buy-in. On a smaller team,
Nor do I want to,
right? Yes, but in a smaller team, sometimes you can kind of pose the question in a way that I guess leads to kind of the obvious decision, which is usually the one that you're probably making when you're considering all the factors. But not everyone necessarily sees all of those factors. So I think you're right to a point. That confidence plays a huge amount. The confidence that you have in your decision and the way you act, but then the confidence that the folks that have been around and have seen that track record obviously helps also. But I think another thing that's important when you're talking about really getting people bought in even if they're not on the front end. Because on the front end, let's be honest, you might have to believe a little extra hard for them. But I think over time, a way to reinforce that and kind of develop the buy-in is really holding true to the change and holding people accountable to the change, and reiterating that over and over again until it really does become a part of the culture and kind of the standard way that you do business. I've gone so far as to, kind of with that whole experience leadership concept, I've gone so far as to rename certain IT service queues as instead of my service requests, it's my service opportunities, right? And you're kind of shifting the mindset to, because now every time they click on that, every time they read it, it's no longer a request, it's an opportunity. And it doesn't happen overnight. There were plenty of jokes like, oh, you don't have to take all opportunities. I'm like, no, you do. But
no, that's actually
yeah, these opportunities you do, but at least it starts to kind of shift that mindset into, oh, this is an opportunity for me to help someone rather than this is like a requirement of something that I have to do. And again, it's not going to be overnight, but when you're reinforcing that mindset and you figure out ways to continually reinforce it, like even on a simple, word change on an area where they do their work, I think it goes a long way to kind of influencing that subconscious. Because the worst thing for buy-in is, here's a change, and then it kind of hit a road bump, so we're not really sticking to it, or it's okay, you should do this, but if you don't, no one's going to say anything, because at that point, it's just not compelling for me to want to buy in, because I can't trust in it, so why am I going to get behind it? That's my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah. I would say, like, one of my questions I would have for you, Kevin, is who specifically would be the most important for you to get buy-in from, in your opinion? Like, what level of your organization are you really seeking that from?
So it's tough because I think there's two answers to that question. I think one is the most important person that could, if they bought in, everyone else would buy in. Mm-hmm. And then the second part is you have that kind of MVP, right? So that's the MVP that buys in, that everybody follows. Mm-hmm. And then you have the other people that could potentially believe they're that MVP, but they may not be as important as they think that they are in that process. Mm-hmm. And they actually may be the people that maybe they might not be here for the long run. So, there's that juggle that, you have somebody that believes they're the MVP and somebody that is the MVP. Mm. It's almost like you look at the best example I give is like a TO. Like TO is, you treat him like an MVP, you put him on an island, but don't let him interact with the team.
Yeah.
Right. And he always added value, but as long as you knew how to coach him and keep him away from the team. Right. But also, like, everybody knows that TO was infectious and probably not best for anybody's culture, but they still took a chance on him. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And I think we all have those kind of TOs in our businesses that are, I'm the MVP, but are you really, or is it, is the coaching staff the MVP because we know how to manage you and keep you on an island and utilize you for your strengths and keep you away from the rest of the team? And I don't mean to sound negative by any effect, because I think there's a lot of positives when you learn how to manage TO properly, right? So it's those kind of things that when you talk about a culture and an organization, one is how do you identify the TOs, and then how do you treat the TOs so they feel like they get the respect that they deserve, but they're still effective for the organization. But all of that comes into play when I think we're talking about culture, because we all know TO in the wrong, like I know, like I'm a Ravens fan through and through. TO coming to the Ravens would be terrible. Like they just wouldn't work. He clashed with the head coaching. He clashed with everybody here. But TO at the right team, I guess when you call it, I don't know, what was his best run at the Cowboys or whatever it was. So, like, but the coaching staff that knows how to manage that is completely different. than the coaching staff that says, hey, we're not dealing with that, right? But I feel like everybody has a TO and it affects their culture one way or the other. It's just a matter of if they're willing to deal with it or not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the reason I asked is mainly because, like, I think one, like, at least I've never been in this position, so obviously I think people should take my opinion with a grain of salt. But just thinking about it, if I was in a position where I was really wanting to make an impactful change that impacted the entire organization, and I wanted my team to buy in, definitely like who I'd be thinking of is primarily like, I guess my direct, I would say like almost the people that directly report to me and that I work with on a daily basis, because I don't think it's easy, and honestly I would argue it's not really possible to manage like too much lower than that and like really expect people to like buy in, because like those people aren't really interacting with you. And I think that's the tough part, is because like from my perspective, just being a more like general worker, right? I report to my boss. I interact with my boss on a day-to-day basis, and I don't interact with the CEO. I still honestly, unfortunately, still don't even know my new company's CEO's name, and it's coming up on my third week, right? So it's just one of those things where, since I don't like, and honestly, it's not one of those things where it's just, I'm not going to have a relationship with them, right? They could be a great person. They could have a bunch of amazing ideas for how to drive the company. But what motivates me to come and work and perform at my best is my direct boss and the other like sort of cultural aspects of working at the company and how it feels. But like my direct boss is like the primary thing that could make my work life a living hell, or an amazing place to be. And I've experienced like multiple different bosses and multiple different types of management styles, and it does make a huge difference. And that's why I think like getting those people to buy into what the vision is and why, and have them be excited about it, and being able to have them explain it to your team and why it's important, is to me like the most important thing. Because like hearing it directly from them will mean so much more to me, honestly, than hearing it even from directly from the horse's mouth from the CEO, right? Like, I mean, I've had jobs where, you listen to the CEO's message on like a video, or like maybe you're in front of them and they're kind of like speaking to, a bunch of people. It still would mean more to me to have it come directly from my manager's mouth and have them really go into detail and explain everything. We can ask questions, really see how this is going to impact us. Like, at least from my perspective, that would just mean so much more to me and get me bought into the process. I don't know. What do you guys think about that, though?
Well, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Would it mean more to you that your direct manager comes to you and explains those things to you because you've never heard from the CEO before? Or like, where does that perspective come from?
I wouldn't say it's because I've never heard from the CEO before, because at my last job, the CEO was very vocal within the company. He was a very like, you knew who this man was. Like, there's no way I couldn't go my first week without knowing who this man was, right? Like, he was very front and center, and I appreciate that. Like, I think it was only adding value, but like, I think percentage wise, it was maybe 20%, and then I think the rest was the team that I was a part of. Like, we had like a specific culture within our team that was aligned perfectly, I think, with business objectives and business models, right? And all credit goes to my managers at that time, winky face Josh. But like, that was really like the primary percentage piece, was just was that interaction. But like, the CEO was still adding a ton of value, right? Like, it's still setting the tone for the organization for us to like be in line with, and hearing directly from him and having him explain things is nice, because it is nice to know, like, get a sense of the personality of the company that you're working for, which pretty much is the CEO for the most part. Like, it kind of trickles down from there. So I think it's helpful. I just still think the majority of it's going to come directly from your manager, I think, because you could have a manager that is completely against a lot of company ideas, and they like sort of like sideline conversation where it's like, yeah, I don't really buy into this, we're just going to do XYZ, and pretend like we're really caring about whatever the objective is, this new objective that's coming out with the company. And that's like the last thing that you want, right? So I just think like they're going to be the drivers of like, their 10 to 20 people buying into it.
Have you ever been in a position where you felt like your direct report or your manager wasn't delivering the message that the CEO or the direction of the company was supposed to be going in?
Yes, absolutely.
So in that scenario, you'd prefer not. I'm just curious, is there a time where you say, hey, I don't like, this is not the direction. Like, I don't want you to give me a misperception of where we're supposed to go. And then where do I go to get direction?
I think at that point, unfortunately, at least in my positions, I haven't really had a direct line to something else to really get that sort of direction if it's not my direct bosses. So it's like at that point, if depending on how it's impacting my job at work and the direction that I want to head with my work and my career, then I might honestly just look elsewhere, just because it's right. Like I can't go to the CEO directly and be like, hey, like my boss is telling you this. Like I'd get in probably a lot of trouble because he's like, well, you shouldn't go, around your superior just to talk, like just to get to me, right? It's kind of like it's not a good look. So I think it's just I honestly don't even know what I would do in that situation other than like try my best to do what I can to help lead up and change the culture internally and be a good example of like what, like say I'm really in line, like I heard what the CEO said and I'm really in line with it, like I can act on those values if I'm that type of person. But the problem with that is that that type of person is so rare. Most people follow, few people lead. And if you really want to impact the organization, you need to just have good managers and good leaders in place that are really bought into what you're doing and what direction you want to have.
Good insight, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If I could add on to Colby's point just a little bit and kind of in response to your question there, Kevin, I think it does require both, right? The CEO needs to be sharing their vision, because then in Colby's position, if his manager is telling him something different, like we're not going to do this or whatever, at least now I know there's a disconnect. And then I have a choice of whether I'm going to buy into the CEO's mission and try to support that, or buy into that management level. But if I don't know that there's a discrepancy, then if I'm only relying on my direct manager's feedback, I think that could cause some challenges. I do think the trust and the relationship aspect that you build with your direct report is key, right? Because the better, the stronger your relationship, the stronger the level of influence you have. And that's really, John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of truth to that. Shannon, I'm curious, man, any thoughts around, like, have you found yourself in one of those arenas where, you're getting mixed messages from either your boss and the company's going a different way, or have you found yourself in one of those dilemmas?
Oh yeah, for sure. And usually the problem that generally comes from a situation like that is the relationship to the company. So like a CEO might have an overall vision and an overall mission that he's capitalizing, but a director or direct manager might have something that's more narrow in scope. So the overall mission, it's a good kind of brand and theme to follow, but it might be harmful to their team, or it might be harmful to their leadership style. So like they have to kind of separate from what the company's overall vision is to what their leadership style or their vision is for their local team. Because really, there's always, whenever we're talking about change management, Kevin, there's always a group that is usually heavily excited or influenced by the change, and then there's generally the other half, or the other 30% or 20% that actually it affects their day to day, and it's just hard. It's a biased method for them to even accept it because of the way it might affect them. So like the same disclaimer Colby said, I'm no CEO. I can't give great advice to this. I'm just a measly old software engineer, but what I can give you experience. And I really liked your topic because you mentioned both kind of change management and culture. And I think like they go hand in hand. I think change management, no matter how good it is garbage if there's no culture. And I think it's hard to establish a culture without establishing a company brand, like some kind of like theming or messaging that, everyone's kind of on the same, they're in the same boat, rowing different oars, but in the same boat. And I think of that analogy directly with like Apple, right? Like a brand like Apple, everyone kind of understands the mission, or at least like the theming of their brand, and it kind of like correlates to their culture. as well, right? Like you hear a lot about like Apple pushes innovation, and they push it culturally, and they push it as a brand. So I think the same would apply for kind of handling change management in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're a CEO who's making changes or making calls, but you built up a brand, or you've built up that kind of overall company statement. I think it's a lot easier for people to accept, or at least in my experience, it's been a lot easier to accept change that I see that ultimately aligns with the company. But some people don't do that. I've also been in the same shoes for companies who don't have any established brand or any established culture, and like change management, it almost seems like someone's just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks inside a big boardroom. Like that's what pops in my mind immediately.
Yeah, I mean that's all great feedback. I think, what I guess bothers me, if I were to say what, that you have, it's not that it bothers me, it's just that I'm aware of, more so than anything else, is that you have, again, the way that we started is you have people that have been here for 5 years, not 20, and they don't know that other iterations of change have done us well, and change is necessary for the organization. And if we don't change, listen, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not changing, you're dying. Like I've always felt that way. So, and it's just difficult for some people to adapt to change when they haven't seen it yet. And then you could have been here 2 years, and then all of a sudden, oh man, like this is different today than it was when I started 2 years ago. And I agree with the fact that to your point, Colby, is making sure that their direct reports have the clear messaging, right? To say, hey, tell your teams that this is why we're doing this, and this is the reason for this impact, and it's those things. But Shannon, to your point, is what if it's self-preservation for the manager and the messaging gets misconstrued? So, there's a lot of that goes on. I mean, listen, we're only a 100-person firm. We're not huge. That's what we sell. We sell the fact that we're a boutique shop. We sell the fact that we're white glove support. We sell the fact that we're something that the big organizations and the carriers and the cellular carriers can't provide. And we're selling all those things. But then all of a sudden, one day I turn around, I'm like, why are we acting like we're this huge conglomerate that can't communicate? Because people are siloed, even though we're doing our best to train every single individual manager, give them the resources that they need to be successful with their teams. But then you never actually know everyone's true intentions for their specific team. So that's always a challenge. And I'm hearing both of you guys, but I'd love to hear from both of you guys how you fix that, and if you have any insight around that. Or all three of you, Josh.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll follow your question with a question if I can. So one of the things I've been doing a lot lately is I've been listening to kind of like production podcasts. So they're like rewatch podcasts of the show or something. And one of the things I've realized that the writers do a lot is they actually, when they're setting out the story for the season, they don't necessarily know where it's headed. So they start to write to the person's real attributes, like the strengths that they bring to that character. And you mentioned something earlier about, managing people's strengths. So when you're thinking about the positions and the roles and the way things are structured and organized within your organization, do you try to make a person fit into a role that has certain responsibilities, or do you look at what that person's really good at and then kind of make the role kind of more fit around them leveraging their strengths? Because with 100 people, you've got the diverse skill set, I'm assuming, to kind of cover almost every aspect of what you would need. But where do you plug them in to make those pieces work in the best fashion? And obviously you can't always do that because there's things that just have to get done. But I'm curious on what your approach with that is, because I know I personally have found myself over the years crafting positions, I think, more in line with, not immediately, but the longer a person's with me, the more their position starts to kind of gravitate into what they are interested in and what their passions are, just naturally, because they produce well. So I try to reward them and give them more of what they like to do.
No, you're nailing it. I mean, listen, there's been many times where we've tailored to people's strengths, right? It's if you're, and it's not what I've challenged your organization in is you tailor, for me, I say you tailor positions to people's strengths that have shown you that they're good at what they're doing, that you assign them to do. Not the opposite. If they're not good at what they were doing, don't give them something else because you think they're going to be better at it, right? Two totally different things. The latter is they've proven that they haven't been able to do the job that you assigned them to, but the former is you're doing the job that I assigned you to do, but you're better at something else, right? So two totally different things. And I've challenged the organization to think that way as well, to say, hey, how do we, and as we grow, it's challenging. And again, I say we're not a huge company, but we're bigger than I ever thought we would be. So how do you learn to navigate those waters to say the wrong people on the bus are the wrong people on the bus? It doesn't matter what seat you put them in. They're the wrong people on the bus. Mm-hmm. But you could have the right people on the bus in the wrong seat. And that's what I'm saying. You move them to the better seat on the bus, and maybe they're the bus driver, or maybe they're, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of good places for people to be that do good work at an organization, but not the people that have proven to do poor work. So what I've challenged Link to do, especially recently with revamping our culture, is, I believe firmly that you have your A players and everything in between, and you have your C's or D's, or whatever you want to say. But we lose A's because we keep our C's, and the C's are the ones that are picking up the work for the A's. And the last thing I ever want to do is lose A's because we're not willing to adjust from the C's or move the C's to a different role. Move the A's if they're, you know what I mean? If depending on the role, I mean, if it's a sales role, that's a little different. You don't want to promote your A salesperson to a sales manager because you lose their sales. So it's all case by case. But this is something I've been challenging the company as a whole. I mean, listen, we're strong. I think we have strong leaders. I think we have strong leadership. I think we're a strong organization. I think it's the most exciting time to ever be at Link. And I don't want anyone to hear this and say, oh my God, Kevin heard this, or Kevin said all these challenges we're having. The reality is we all have these challenges, and it's all challenging. And as a business owner, it's always challenging. The difference is that if we're not willing to talk about the challenges, we're never going to get better to overcome the 100%. Challenges. So that's my full disclaimer to my organization, Josh. When you ping everybody on Link and say, "Hey, listen to the CEO talking," I do believe that we are a strong organization, but I always think that we can get better, and I always think that we can grow as a company. And I also, this is great for other people to hear too, to know that I'm thinking about the different challenges that our management has and that our managers have. And I do think I'm aware. I'm not in the day-to-day like they are, but I am very aware of the challenges that they face. And I always want to help them overcome that. And I want them to know that we talk about stuff like this. And this stuff is important to me as the CEO and as the owner. And anything we can do to help them get better, I want to be able to do. So I don't know if I answered the direct question, but I wanted to get my disclaimer out there that, I feel great about us as a whole. There are no jabs at anybody in my organization for sure.
Yeah, no. And I think you answered the question. I agree with you. And, I respect the fact that you're being authentic. That's what this is all about. And, these are challenges everybody faces, culture. If you're not thinking about culture, then culture is going to take care of itself. And a lot of times that's not where you want to be.
No. And listen, as far as the, when you take over and I do believe we're in the biggest shift that we've been in at Link. And I believe this for 18 years. But I will say that I said this today to one of my guys, this is the most exciting time it's ever been here at Link. More exciting than day one. And they look at me and they go, how is this more exciting than day one? And I go, because day one sucked. Like, you don't understand how hard day one was. We didn't have any contracts. We didn't have any money. We didn't have anything. I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. The only thing that was exciting about day one was the proof of concept. And it was like, oh, wow, someone will buy this. Oh, someone needs this. Oh, someone will pay us. And it was that progression that made it very exciting, but not nearly as exciting as it is today when you can go through an overhaul of a culture and you revamp the culture with money, with clients, with people that are paying you, with people that are happy. It's so different now. But the better part is when you can do that, have the startup mentality, but have the money coming in and have the clients coming in, but still treat every client like they're your only one, your prospect like they're your only prospect. You keep that startup mentality. So it's just interesting because I took everybody to Salamander Resort here in Virginia, which is like not like a 5-star, it's a 5-star resort. I took 15 managers or people that I deemed as leaders of the organization to Salamander Resort to get out of my head what I wanted the future culture of the company to be. And I wanted them to understand what the direction that I wanted to take the company. So we all sat down and we went through the whole thing. But my challenge to them was, I need you to understand what's in my head. So whatever we have to do for the next 3 days, let's sit down, let's hash it out so that you understand that, change can be a great thing. And I want them to understand the changes that I've been through and all the different iterations of change that I've been through over the course of the last 18 or 19 years, so that they could gain confidence that that no matter what we're doing, that I'm making the right decisions. So that was kind of something that happened the first of the year, but I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I know that's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Actually,
this is the juicy stuff, man. You
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
you don't get to hear CEOs like talk about kind of
Absolutely.
like
That's because we know you're going to post it online, and I'm going to be.
No, it's really good. It really is.
Yeah.
It sounds like some seriously strong leadership, and it's,
Hey man,
it's nice to
if you're
hear,
not
like,
authentic, man, your people know that.
Yeah.
People know what's going on in the organization, whether you tell them or not. And if you don't tell them, they're going to have their own conclusions. If you do tell them, they're going to think you might be lying to them. So, like, the reality is, stuff like this is great because,
Yep.
they get to see what's really going on. And none of this is easy. Like, especially when you go through change in organization when people aren't comfortable. And sometimes you see, some people aren't comfortable with change, and that's okay too. And, we either help them get there or help them find a place where they can feel like they're a part of it. And it may not be at Link all the time. That's okay too.
Yeah, I did want to kind of follow up on your other question of like how you can like change that sort of stuff, especially culture. And like one thing that I think is actually one of the harder things to do is you're talking about like finding your MVPs, right? Which I think is really important because those are going to be the people, managers, your top star workers, et cetera. Those are going to be the people that really like lead production, lead the sort of like value that your company is producing. And I think that's where a lot of companies I feel like really struggle is actually measuring precisely enough to notice who those people are, because like I feel like there's a lot of like all-star people that are kind of just working in silence that no one really notices. Like maybe the individual people that they impact on a day-to-day basis see it and feel it, and if you ask them they could tell you, but it's hard for maybe upper mid-level managers to notice it and communicate it to like the people that would need to be communicated to in order for them to like be aware of what's going on, right? So I think the more you can have precise measurements in place to really see what level of production you're getting out of your employees, the better. I think it's easier in certain realms than others, right? Like, so in sales, you have sales numbers, right? And you have how happy your clients are, right? That's a great way, an easy way of noticing. And it's like, super apparent, right? But in IT, for instance, I feel like it's actually really hard to discern who your best technicians are if you're not very observant of what's going on and like there on a day-to-day basis seeing everything that's happening. Because are you going to listen in to every conversation that they have with every one of their customers? No, you might get a couple glimpses of it from time to time, but you don't know if that's representative of their body of work. You don't know if they know they're being watched, and so like they have a better tone, right? You don't know if their ticket volume is fluff, because you can't, like, especially depending on how many tickets are in there, you can't like comb through every ticket and see how much of their numbers are super easy versus complicated issues. You don't have the time to parse through seeing like what level of technical difficulty they like went through to solve the ticket. There's so many variables you actually don't get to measure. There are other things that you can measure, right? But it doesn't ever paint you the full picture. And that's why like being there physically and having a good manager that notices it, they could easily communicate to you like, yeah, like, you know, Shan's my guy. He's on his shit every day. Like, he's working hard. He treats people like with respect. He's great with them. They love him, you know, and everyone can come to him on the team as a reliable source of information. You know, like, he is like the person holding your team up, right? But like, there's no clue if like your CIO knows that, right? Like, unless that's being communicated from the manager's perspective, because the CIO doesn't have time to even recognize what Shan's doing. And
Well,
so
I think I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you go ahead.
But I think you were finished. So I think that's the key, is where the way that you ended is, you know, I'm a firm believer of leading through autonomy, and the only way that I can get to the messaging that I need to anybody in the organization that I needed to get to is absolutely through my exec team. And if my exec team, if you're talking IT, and if my CTO isn't delivering the message that I need her to be delivering, then that's a different thing. But I absolutely have every expectation that she would. And I think that most CEOs do believe that. And I think it's communicated clearly and efficiently 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Do I think that it's a majority? For sure. And I would hope that all of my managers, you know, I think Colby, you made the mention earlier that, you know, you wouldn't bypass your manager to go to above a level. But I would hope that my managers, if they were in a position respectfully, to be able to reach out and say, hey, we have this disconnect. Can we get either you involved or HR involved or whoever? I would hope that I'd have that relationship at least one level down. Now, it's different if we're talking, you know, 3-4 levels down. That becomes really challenging. But, you know, in an IT environment, I would expect my CTO to, I believe that I've spent the time necessary with my CTO to make sure that she understands the messaging to her department that's necessary, and to relay that message. And if it's not, I believe I spent enough time with her direct reports to be able to that they feel comfortable to come to me. So there's one way that's there. So I have a fly flying on my head. There's one way that's there to be able to, as long as you can spend enough time one level down. And we don't have, here's my other thing. I don't believe that there's a theory that you should never be able to bypass, even as a superior, to bypass the manager to go directly to their report. I don't believe that. I believe that in order to create a solid team, you have to be able to have that flexibility so that person can therefore come back up to you if there was an issue. And then you can determine, do we get HR? Do we get whatever we need? So I'm more of an open communication type person. And I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm saying what works for us is that if I have the ability as the CEO to bypass the CIO to go to our director of IT, I have every right to do that. My CIO has every right to bypass the director of IT to go to any people that directly report to them, because it just allows open communication. But if we have too much structure, listen, I don't know what it's like to run a 10,000 person organization. I only know I'm a 10,000 person organization. I only know what it's like to run a 100 person organization. And this works really well for a 100 person organization.
Yep.
And maybe there's somebody that runs a huge organization has different advice around that. But I don't like following that super corporate structure for a 100 person organization.
That makes sense.
I think it goes back to what you said, Kevin. I mean, it's really just boils down to what kind of culture do you want in your environment? And you're creating a culture where let's
communicate.
Exactly. Let's communicate. Let's have those easy connections. It's not about some sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, military rank and file, right? The chain of command. That you can kind of bypass that.
Look at you, man.
You know, old Marine Corps days coming out. But, you know, you can bypass that and, you know, kind of just have that direct and open communication. So I think looking at the time here, we're probably ready for some final thoughts. So Shan, I'm going to throw it over to you first. Sir. Final thoughts around, you know, this topic tonight.
Yeah, no, I think it was a really good one. Like I mentioned before, I don't think there's much change, or I don't think there's strong change management when there's not strong culture. And I think culture is directly relative to branding. it sounds like Kevin's done a really great job at that. And I really liked where we ended too as well. Like I'm thinking of like a multi-joined table, like a database in terms of like the 100-person organization with open communication. Like, you know, there's always a way to reference feedback or like points in any like department in any level of management. I like that open communication style, and I'd like to see like and that's really the selling point, Kevin, because honestly, we can say that can be strategically replicated on a 100 or a 10,000 person organization, but it can't. It really can't. It's just not possible. So I thought that was really interesting with where we ended things too, because it has me thinking in my mind, like, okay, like how can you accomplish something with some general feedback without, you know, stepping on other people's toes or taking up like a CEO's time who has to deal with like 4,000 other people who are trying to get the same kind of message to them. I think the whole relationship and open communication thing is key.
But it also doesn't work in the opposite either, right? So like small businesses had to be very mindful of who are you bringing in? Who are you bringing in to run your organization? Are you bringing in somebody that ran a 10,000 person company? Or are you bringing in somebody that fits your 100-person culture? Yep. And those are keys to you. Do you want to think like a startup or do you want to think like Microsoft? Right. And for me, I want to think like a startup. I don't care. Like until we reach some kind of critical mass in my mind that I go, oh my God, we have to shift everything. To me, we always think like a startup because that's my mentality. And it's served us well. You know, we've managed to build a company without any outside funding to $100 million with no outside money, nothing. So that's always been my focus. Is how do you, and the only reason we operate that way is because we always think like a startup. But then it does us no good to bring in, and I'm not saying that we've done this or we've made this mistake by any means. What I'm saying is that companies make the mistake to say, oh my God, I was a 10-person company. Now I'm huge. I'm a 100-person company. I need an executive from Microsoft. And then that executive comes in and changes everything. And it's not what you want it to be because they're not thinking like a startup. The other thing that I'm confident to say is that, you know, when we went to that manager's offsite and I challenged our people, I said, hey, I need everybody to think like a startup. And then we left and I was talking to our chief people and culture officer after, and something hit me and I said, most of these people have been here for about 5 years. We value them greatly. They're awesome at what they do, but they don't know what a startup is. We have to define what a startup mentality is. And I put it on a freaking slide and I said, startup mentality. And then after we left, I realized that they probably don't know what a startup mentality means. Startup mentality means you have nothing. You got to squeeze water out of a rock. And you're usually in a startup, you're one of, 2, 3, 5 people. And it's a different energy. It's a different flow. So, that's something that hit me recently that I just thought maybe I'd share with you guys.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that. I had the same mindset. When building a brand, I had the same mindset. Like I could decide to take $10,000 that I have in my savings and just market and just hope for the best, right? Or I could pretend like I have zero and try everything organically and just completely tackle it at the most free and accessible methods I could until it forced me to learn what works. And I think kind of like the same mindset fits with that. And I think it can be applied anywhere too. So I really like that as well.
100%. I didn't mean to cut you off, man. I just thought that was one little tidbit I didn't get out there.
That was good.
I think it was a good point. Colby, you got any final thoughts around this topic?
I do, yeah. So one thing I would actually challenge is all the non-managerial people listening to the podcast to really think and consider is like put yourself in Kevin's shoes and any other startup or any other CEO shoes and think about like what it means to what it would mean to you to own a company, to make tons of tough decisions, to be concerned about your company's future, their bottom line, your employees' future, the employee growth, like everything, right? It's a lot of responsibility and stress and everything, right? And it's not saying like, oh, like what was Kevin, so to speak. It's just think about it that way, because you can understand why someone would make choices in the way that they would with that in mind. And I would also like strongly encourage people, like, the CEO isn't the only thing leading the company. It's all the people that are involved with it, including the people that aren't managers of the company. How you decide to act and how you decide to be within your job does influence the people around you, and you can either be a force for good or a force for bad, right? And just, it's really amazing what it, like, especially I would say at my last job, I felt this the most. It's an incredible feeling when you put a few years into a company and you help to promote a positive culture and workforce, or like work culture around you. And then especially when you notice it like while you're there, and then when you go to leave and you just sort of realize the impact, the positive impact that you had. And people tell you how much you impacted them, right? Like there's so much good that you can do even without like having the power, so to speak, to make decisions on like a company level, right? And that stuff can really just have so many positive effects throughout everyone's lives and all that sort of stuff around you. So I would just really encourage people to really take that seriously.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the good feedback.
Yep.
That was a great point. Kevin, I'm going to turn to you. You got any final thoughts on this topic?
I mean, no, I just, I think to Colby's point is, he's right. There's every decision that's made in an organization is made for the entire organization, not for one person, not for any one individual, not for any one, group of people, not for any one department. It's made as a whole across the entire company. So in that sense, Colby, you're 100% correct, is that the decisions that are made on a day-to-day basis, might not be popular with they could be your biggest rock star. They could be the best person for the entire company. They could be TO, right? And it's like, but TO, how many different teams did TO play for, right? There was a reason for that. He was a super talent, but they could only find a place for him at certain organizations that were willing to be a suitor for him. So, there's all those type of decisions that no matter if you're a rock star, no matter who you are, and not everybody will ever understand the reasons behind all of your decisions and why you make those decisions. And nor can the expectation be that a CEO can share all those reasons for those decisions amongst everybody in the organization. Now, when we were 5 people, that was feasible. When we're 100, probably not so much. So, all those things that I think, as we're presenting challenges here, which I love this, by the way, presenting challenges and being open and honest and just sharing challenges on a podcast. The reality is I believe 100% in our people. I believe 100% in our organization. But Josh, you asked a difficult question to start the conversation, which I was willing to do. And I said, hey, here's our challenges and here's what we're working through. And, I just want anybody that would listen to this on the outside to know I'm confident in our people. I'm confident in our organization. This wasn't about anybody in particular. This is just the challenges that you deal with every day as a CEO.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I think that's a great point. And it was like Colby was in my head, honestly. He stole everything I had for a final thought.
Whatever,
so,
man. You don't have something original.
I'm gonna add on it, but definitely I was gonna point out the whole, individual contribution to culture and what that can mean. So, I'll keep it short and sweet because Colby did sum it up quite well. But if I can steal from like Gandhi or even Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, right? Just you be the change that you want to see, I think that's key because culture starts with the individual. It really does. And if you come in with a positive mindset and you're excited to be there, that's going to rub off on other people, and vice versa. If you come in, negative and upset, that has the potential to rub off on other people. So what you're trying to do in a business is strike a balance that where the positive outweighs that negative, so that anytime negative is introduced, hopefully the positive is able to kind of influence it into the right spot where you want it to be.
100%. And no matter how great your culture is, it can always get better. 100%. And it's always a work in progress. So, it's always to be able to reflect. It's refreshing, right? To get on a call like this and say, hey, here's our vulnerabilities. Here's what we can get better. Here's what we can do better. I'd rather have this dialogue then say, hey, we're great at everything we do and we can't get any better, because that's all a lie and we all know that. So just tell the truth.
Yep.
Love that.
And I think that's a perfect segue for us. We are continuing to try and get better and better. We want to make sure we are living up to your expectations and creating a culture around that everyone can be a part of. So please share this with your friends, comment below, tell us what you like, what you don't like, because that's going to drive how we develop the future podcasts. And we really want to hear from you, because this is for all of you. I mean, we get tons out of it every week, but, we could do this without recording it. And so the reason we do is to provide value to everyone else. And we want to make sure that value is maximized. So tell us how you feel, whether it's good or bad. It's only going to help us to get better. And, share with your friends, have them subscribe, because they can give us feedback too. So that's it. And we will see you next time on Mastermind for the Masses. Thanks again, Kevin, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. So long, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.